If love contained the wild, can it also haunt it forever? The question lingered in Mira's mind as the car rolled down the narrow, tree-choked road leading to the old city zoo. The steering wheel vibrated under her hands, the hum of the tires swallowed by the weight of silence that seemed to deepen with every turn. She hadn't been here in 20 years, not since the fire that had devoured the cages and taken everything, including Orun, the keeper who had loved his animals more than life itself. The world had moved on, but the zoo hadn't. Nature had reclaimed its borders, pulling rust and ruin into the folds of its green dominion. The front gate sagged under the vines, its sign barely legible. City ZOO, closed since 2005. Mira stepped out of the car and slung her camera bag over her shoulder. The air was heavy with the scent of wet leaves and rust. She had come to film a short documentary, a quiet, reflective piece about forgotten places. Yet, as she looked through the bars, she couldn't shake the feeling that the place wasn't forgotten at all. It was waiting. A wind moved through the trees, stirring the overgrowth. It almost sounded like breathing. She pushed the gate open. It moaned in protest, echoing faintly across the grounds. Inside, the paths were fractured mosaics of stone and moss. Benches lay overturned. Signs that once bore cheerful names, Elephant Pavilion, Big Cat Habitat, were faded into ghostly lettering. The cages stood like ancient monuments, each one a skeleton of what once was. Mira pressed record on her handheld mic. This zoo was shut down in 2005 after a fire in the central enclosures. She narrated softly. No survivors, human or animal. But locals claim the animals' cries can still be heard at night, carried by the wind. Her voice wavered slightly. She remembered those cries. As a child, she had visited often. Her father used to bring her here every Sunday. Eerie, the old keeper, had always greeted them with a kind smile. "They trust you if you listen," he told her once, crouched beside the lion's cage. Animals know hearts better than words. Mira swallowed the memory. She was here for facts, not ghosts. She walked deeper into the zoo, her boots crunching on gravel. The deeper she went, the quieter it became. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then, faintly, so faintly she thought she imagined it, came a sound. A low, rhythmic hum, like a growl wrapped in distance. Mira froze. The wind had stilled. Leaves hung motionless. The sound came again, longer this time, rolling through the air like thunder trapped in a cage. She turned toward the old Big Cat Habitat. The sign above it hung crooked, one chain broken. The enclosure was half collapsed, its bars twisted and blackened from fire. "This is where the lion enclosure used to be," she whispered into her recorder. "Home of Raja, I think his name was." Her voice faltered at the name. Raja, the golden lion. She remembered feeding him through the bars, a trembling piece of meat in her child-sized hand. He had been enormous, but gentle. Arun had stood beside her, his palm steadying hers. "Don't fear him," he'd said. "Fear only forgetting him." She stepped closer. Inside the cage, nothing moved, only ash, creepers, and the remnants of what might have been a feeding bowl. But the air was warm here, unnaturally so. Mira lifted the recorder again. Strange. The temperature feels higher near the enclosure. Then, on the playback, she heard it. A faint per deep resonant, almost affectionate. Mira's breath caught. She looked up sharply, nothing. Only the swaying of leaves. She replayed the clip again, turning the volume higher. The sound was unmistakable. A lion's purr, followed by what sounded like a word, a breath, barely audible, shaped like her name. Mira. Her stomach tightened. She rewound, listened again. The same Mira. The rational part of her mind scrambled for explanations. Echo distortion, wind interference, old speaker feedback. Anything but what it sounded like. But when she turned around, the zoo had changed. The air seemed thicker, the colors deeper, greens too vivid, shadows too black. Some were distant. She thought she heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate. She followed the sound down a broken path lined with old feeding signs. Reptile house, bird sanctuary, caretaker's quarters. She stopped at the last one. The door to the caretaker's hut hung slightly ajar, its hinges streaked with rust. She pushed it open, and dust motes danced in the beam of her flashlight. The room smelled faintly of smoke and old hay. On the far wall hung a calendar, its last date circled in red. March 18, 2005, the day of the fire. And below it, a wooden shelf lined with tin bowls, worn brushes, and name tags. Each tag carried an animal's name: Raja, Meena, Tara, Buzo. She traced a finger over them. Beneath the shelf lay a small wooden box. Inside, she found a weathered notebook, its pages yellowed but still legible. Feeding done. One entry read, Raja Kumar today. Spent hours near his cage. He still looks at me like he understands. The city wants to close the zoo. They don't understand. These animals aren't just beasts. They're souls that trusted us. If they die here, I'll stay with them. No one leaves alone. The last line sent a shiver through her. Mira closed the book, her hands trembling. The purr came again, closer this time, vibrating through the air. She turned toward the door, her heart pounding. Outside, the path was empty, but the air shimmered faintly, like heat rising from stone. A shape flickered, massive, golden, there for a heartbeat before fading. Raja. Mira's eyes widened. A ghost of a lion stood at the edge of the overgrowth, translucent yet solid enough to cast a shadow. It stared at her, unblinking. For a long moment, neither moved. Then faintly, from the far side of the path came another sound, the slow scrape of boots, the jingle of a metal pail. A man's voice, low and gentle, murmuring something she couldn't hear. She turned toward the sound, but the figure was gone. Only echoes remained. The night had settled over the abandoned zoo, draping it in shadows that seemed almost alive. Mira sat cross-legged inside the caretaker's hut, the notebook open on her lap, flashlight casting trembling beams across the dusty walls. Every so often, the wind sighed through broken windows, stirring leaves outside like the whisper of distant paws. She replayed the recordings on her camera, again and again. Each time, the faint purrs, growls, and occasional murmurs of a man's voice echoed back at her, layered over the animal sounds. The more she listened, the more distinct they became, patterns that shouldn't exist, rhythms that merged human heartbeat and feline rumble. It was as if someone had woven themselves into the animal's very presence. Mira's fingers brushed over the notebook again. Arun's words haunted her. If they die here, I'll stay with them. No one leaves alone. Her chest tightened. She remembered Arun as a man who spoke softly, who crouched at eye level with the lions, whose hand never shook when he fed them. He had treated these creatures not as caged animals, but as companions, friends, almost children. A rustle came from the other side of the hut. Mira froze. At first, it seemed like wind. Then came the faint metallic jingle, pails, chains, tools, though the place had been empty for decades. Hello? She whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. Her heart thudded against her ribs, loud enough to echo in her own ears. Silence answered. Then a soft, almost melodic growl, a purr this time, came from the doorway. Mira swung her flashlight toward it. Nothing. Only shadows, leaning into the corners like dark fingers. Her breath caught. It's okay. Just imagination. You're alone. And yet, she didn't feel alone. Her gaze wandered to the big cat habitat. She remembered feeding Raja as a child, feeling his hot breath through the bars. The memory was vivid, almost tangible. And then she saw it, just for a heartbeat, a golden blur moving between the broken bars of the cage. Her pulse quickened. It was him, Raja. Or rather, the echo of him. Mira backed away, heart racing, but the creature didn't flee. It stayed at the edge of the shadows, staring at her with eyes that carried something beyond instinct, recognition, understanding. She remembered Arun's words again. They know hearts better than words. Her recorder captured another sound. Not a purr or a growl this time, but a low hum, almost human, almost apologetic. Mira's lips parted in shock. She pressed play repeatedly. The voice was unmistakably Arun's, carrying the weight of decades and grief. Mira, it's all right. They're safe. Safe. The word felt impossibly large in that empty place. Mira followed the echoes out into the open, the beam of her flashlight catching twisted metal, vines, and the jagged shadows of fallen enclosures. Every step seemed to awaken fragments of the past. Faint paw prints appeared in the dirt where none should have been. Claw marks traced the walls of the old lion's cage. A sudden warmth brushed her arm, like a ghost of fur. She whispered, almost to herself, "Hi." Where none should have been. Claw marks traced the walls of the old lion's cage. A sudden warmth brushed her arm, like a ghost of fur. She whispered, almost to herself, "I understand. I'm here." At that moment, the air thickened. She could feel it pressing against her skin, carrying the faint scent of hay and blood, fire and earth. The zoo seemed alive, not in a threatening way, but in memory itself. Every shadow stretched longer, almost protective, and every sound hummed with the rhythm of a life that refused to vanish. Her attention was drawn to the caretaker's quarters again. The notebook trembled in her hands. Between its pages, she found a folded note she hadn't seen before. Carefully, she unfolded it. "When you come back, they'll know you. They will remember who fed them, who trusted them, and who still loves them. Do not fear them, Mira. They are mine, and so am I theirs." Mira's throat tightened. The words weren't just written, they resonated, like a chord struck in the air itself. A distant roar rolled across the ruins. It wasn't loud or frightening, more like a greeting, a recognition. And then, from the tree line near the elephant enclosure, a shadow shifted. Not fully solid, but not entirely gone either. The outline of a massive body, swaying slightly, as though alive. The recorder caught it, a low, trembling trumpet. And then silence. Mira's fingers tightened around the notebook. Every animal she had known from Orlun's entries, the lions, the elephants, the birds, were here in some form. Not flesh and blood, but something closer to soul. She stepped closer to the big cat habitat. The golden shadow emerged fully this time, light shimmering along its edges. Raja. The lion stared at her, and she felt a warmth, a bond, more powerful than fear. And then she saw him, the shadow of a man, tall and calm, carrying himself with the same gentle authority Orlun had. He moved among the animals as if they were solid, tangible. Feeding, stroking, talking. Every creature responded. "Orlun?" Mira whispered. The shadow nodded, silently acknowledging her. And in that nod, she understood. The animals weren't haunting this place. They were remembering him, and through him, they still remembered love. The echoes of cries, roars, and purrs weren't warnings. They were invitations, reminders, songs of loyalty and devotion that time couldn't sever. Mira took a step forward, holding the recorder up. "I'm listening," she said softly. From all directions, the zoo responded. Leaves rustled, shadows flickered, and the faintest sounds of paws, wings, and distant roars circled around her. Each echoed movement felt like a heartbeat, and then she understood the secret Orlun had left behind. Love, pure, unwavering, was strong enough to tether a soul to its charge, even beyond death. She shivered, realizing the weight of the bond. He had stayed to protect them, and in doing so, they had stayed for him. Mira didn't move. She only watched, silent and reverent, as the past and present entwined around her. The night deepened, and the echoes grew softer, as if Orlun and his animals were settling down, welcoming her into their vigil. She pressed her hand against the notebook, feeling warmth radiate through its pages. She had entered a place haunted not by grief, but by love remembered, and somewhere deep in the shadows, a golden mane shimmered faintly in the moonlight. The first pale light of dawn had yet to break, but the zoo was alive in a way Mira had never imagined. The air shimmered with movement, a ripple of shadows and shapes that were only half there. Raja stepped from the ruins of the big cat habitat, solid enough to cast a shadow, yet translucent, as if the morning mist had taken form. Behind him, other animals emerged, elephants with gentle trunks swaying, birds flitting like living whispers, even the small creatures that had once scuttled through the undergrowth. Mira stood frozen, camera and recorder clutched in her hands. Her heart raced, but it was not fear that gripped her, it was awe. Every sound, every movement, carried a sense of presence, of consciousness. She felt eyes upon her, not threatening, but curious, welcoming. Then she saw him. The figure was tall and thin, dressed in the clothes she remembered from photographs. Brown vest, simple shirt, worn trousers. His hair was long, tied back neatly, and his eyes, so familiar, held the gentlest light she had ever seen. Orlun. Not alive in the world of flesh, but alive in a way that transcended it, walking among the echoes of the creatures he had devoted his life to. He turned to Mira, and in his presence, the zoo felt almost sacred. The animals didn't scatter. They moved toward him as if he were a magnet, as if every roar, every trumpet, every purr had been waiting for him. "Orlun?" Mira whispered. Her voice trembled. "Is it really you?" He smiled, a quiet, tender smile that carried decades of love and sorrow. "I never left," he said. His voice was soft, but the recorder caught it clearly, vibrating through the very air around them. "They needed me, and I needed them. And now, you are here. You can help them too." Mira stepped closer, her feet brushing the wet grass. "Help how?" Orlun gestured to the animals surrounding him. Each of them carried traces of memory, of life once lived. These are not mere ghosts, he explained. They are echoes and prints of who we were. They remember me, and I remember them. But soon, even I will fade. The memory of love, though, that can persist. That's why you are here. Record them, preserve them. Let their stories be heard, so that their bond is never forgotten. Mira nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes. She raised the recorder and began to capture the sounds. The low rumble of Raj's purr, the gentle trumpeting of the elephants, the cooing of birds. She spoke softly into the microphone, narrating the history of the zoo, Alrun's devotion, and the connection between man and animal that had survived fire, decay, and time. The creatures responded, their echoes weaving into her words, layering life upon memory. Mira could feel their trust, their acknowledgement. Raja pressed closer, brushing the edge of her foot with his massive paw, and she realized this was not haunting. It was communion. Arun stepped beside her, invisible to most of the world but tangible in the weight of his presence. They never left Mira, he said, and neither have I. Love tethered us to this place. That's why you hear them, why you see them. The bond between human and wild. It is stronger than fear, stronger than death. She lowered the camera, looking around at the ruins that had once seemed empty, desolate. Now they pulsed with memory and devotion. The air itself seemed to hum with life, the faint shimmer of the animals' forms glinting in the first light of morning. Will it ever end? She asked, her voice barely audible. Arun shook his head. Not if someone remembers. If love is enough to bind us, it is enough to keep them alive. These echoes will persist as long as someone listens. Mira understood then that the question she had asked at the very beginning, the one that had lingered in her mind since she entered the zoo, had already found its answer. If love can tame the wild, it can also haunt it forever. She smiled through tears, pressing the recorder one last time to the shelf of tin bowls and name tags. Every sound, every whisper, every echo of Alrun's devotion was captured, preserved. She spoke to the animals gently, as if feeding them with her words. I will remember you. I will share your story. You are loved, and you will never be forgotten. The golden outline of Raja stepped back into the shadows, and the elephants faded slowly, their forms dissolving like mist in sunlight. Arun stood still a moment longer, nodding at her, then began to fade as well. But the warmth, the sense of presence, lingered. Mira felt it seep into the ruins, leaving the zoo empty again, yet whole in memory. She emerged from the gates as the sun broke over the horizon, the forest beyond catching fire with light. The air smelled of damp earth and new beginnings. Her recorder played back the final whisper, a soft, almost human murmur intertwined with the lion's purr. If love can tame the wild, it can also keep it alive. Mira stepped into the car, her hands still trembling from awe. She looked back once at the zoo, and for a fleeting heartbeat, she thought she saw a golden mane flicker through the trees, a shadow waving in farewell. She smiled. The animals were gone, but their bond and Alrun's devotion would echo forever, preserved not just in her recording, but in the hearts of anyone willing to listen. And in that understanding, Mira realized that some hauntings are not meant to frighten. They are meant to remind us of what endures: love, memory, and the ties that refuse to break, even beyond death.